I don't even know what to say to that.
It's massive. We're a walking universal library. We are the way for the universe to figure out and explore the third dimension and understand what it's like to be and live in the third dimension as every individual living thing. And we're all connected through this quantum entanglement. Every single thing that exists is all connected, still connected. Space is an illusion. Distance is an illusion. Separation is all an illusion.
What do you mean it's an illusion?
We appear to be sitting in two separate chairs with a space in between us.
Mm-hmm.
But we're all atoms on an energetic grid that's connected and has always been connected. So the space in between us appears to be a distance, but if you go on the quantum level, you discover that we're both local. We're still in the same position, which is the original position. This entire universe is made up of a complete holography. We're living in a fractal holographic matrix, a matrix of light. And it doesn't take away from there being a creator, because what I'm telling you about is the method used of this to make this creation. The method is a fractal holographic matrix, a matrix of light. Quantum physicists will tell you that a human being exists both as a wave of light and also solid matter. And they got the first image of a wave converting into solid matter on a special type of camera. This is in physics.org. So in wave particle duality, they discovered that everything in the entire universe exists first as waves of light until a conscious observer interacts with it, and then it collapses. This is hard to wrap your mind around, but imagine this.
Isn't that called like the split helix test or something like that? I think it's like the split helix. Like you can't observe matter until you look at it. You know? How creepy is that?
It's actually called the double slit experiment, what he's referring to. Billy Carson's about to explain it in just a moment.
We're sitting here. Your house, it exists as a wave of potentials, not your house. It's a wave of light. Now, the construction technique of the stacking of those atoms that built your house has a specific resonant frequency, so no matter who looks at it, it always collapses into the same exact shape. But if nobody's looking, it's just a wave of potentials. Until you see it, when you bend the corner, it collapses back into a solid structure. This is now well-known, proven science due to the double slit experiment. If you look that up, you'll find out they took a microscopic box, they put a little gun inside that can shoot individual electrons through slits inside the box to hit the back wall. So the two slits here, and they want these particles to hit the back wall to see if it was going to make a digital imprint on the back wall. Well, when they did this, when they looked, it was waves. So they said, wait a minute, how can there be a wave pattern on the back wall? We shot individual single electrons through the slits. This should be dot, 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 dot. I said, we got to look at this and see what's going on. So they put a camera in the box to see what was happening. When they looked, just looking, all of a sudden the electron said, oh, you're looking at me? Okay, I'm going to go back to being solid matter now. Dot, 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 dot. Took the camera away, waves. Put the camera back, dot, 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 dot. Oh, electrons are conscious. They are aware that they're being observed. And electrons orbit every atom in the universe, which means every atom is conscious. That means you think that you're sitting in a chair that's just made by man. We didn't make this chair. We stacked atoms. We stacked conscious atoms in a format that allowed us to sit on them. Everything is conscious. This chair is conscious. This suit is conscious. Everything is conscious because they're all made of atoms. And all we are ourselves are a stack of conscious atoms observing ourselves right now. You see? And so it gets really deep, man. I can go deeper and deeper, but it's pretty powerful stuff.
Keep going. Keep going.
That's the first time I ever heard him laugh.
So the benefit of knowing this, imagine teaching your kids that everything that exists is conscious. A rock, a blade of grass, your clothing, even your book bag is aware. It's conscious. Imagine teaching them how to respect conscious things. The level of respect they will have for their personal items, their bike, their clothing, their book bag, their schoolwork. Understanding and knowing that everything that they interact with, everything they touch or see has a level of consciousness imbued into it. Now you're training your kid to be a super conscious person that understands, like, treat everything that exists, no matter whether we think man made it or it's natural, with respect and dignity. That's the depth of understanding that people need to get to. And when we can get to that level of understanding, whew, wow,
So if we're all, I mean, in which we are, I do understand. If we're all stacked atoms,
Yeah.
stacked conscious atoms,
Yep.
what holds us together?
Electromagnetic forces. That's what holds us together. You don't touch anything. So I may look like I'm touching this chair right now, right? I'm not actually touching the chair. You actually never touch anything. The repulsion of the electromagnetic frequency orbiting the electrons and atoms in my hand are repelling the ones inside the chair, creating a repulsive force, not allowing my hand to pass through the chair, because honestly, atoms are 99.999% empty space. And so what that means is atoms are mostly empty. There's nothing there. The only thing we have is these electromagnetic fields that give us the illusion of separation and solidity. And so if I can obtain the atomic frequency of the vibration of the atoms in this chair and make my hand match that frequency, I would pass my hand right through the chair like it didn't even exist. So there's probably people, beings, maybe on other planets or maybe even here now, that have learned this technique. We're going to match the frequency of this wall and just walk right through. Imagine the military puts on a special suit that can match the frequency of a solid concrete wall and walk right through the wall. It's going to look like magic, but it's just technology. You see, they understand how to match frequencies. If I took all 8 billion people on Earth and took away the empty space in their atoms, I can fit every human being into one sugar cube. There's nothing here. We're not even here. That's how it's really our higher selves. See, our consciousness doesn't exist. It's not created by the brain, I should say. It exists, but it's not created by the brain. It exists in a higher dimension. It's here in the third dimension now because it's inhabiting this avatar body, but it's coming in on a screen, on a beam of light, on an invisible beam. We're inhabiting this avatar body. If you understand that your body doesn't create the consciousness, it downloads it. And what downloads it into your body? You have your neurocorrelates of consciousness, which are 3 giant neurons that wrap around the inside of the skull like a giant crown of thorns. Sound familiar? Everyone walks around with a crown of thorns in their head right now. And then you have your neocortex in the front, which is for spatial and higher reasoning. And then you have your magnetite crystals. And so those 3 things together harness and hold in the frequency that is you, that is saying, this is who I am. And it allows you to inhabit temporally, this avatar body until this avatar body gives out and ceases to operate and exist because of entropy, and releases that spirit energy back into the source, where it will then be recycled once again somewhere else. And so this, the understanding of this is just so powerful, because you got to understand that you are already eternal. We're already eternal beings. When you talk to yourself, you're talking to your higher self from a higher dimension. You're speaking to yourself in another realm. We are all supernatural, eternal beings. A lot of people are trying to fight to become eternal, but we already are eternal. We've already been here for eons and eons. There could be people that that look like kids that are ancient. And there also can be people that are older people that are newborn babies spiritually. Could be their first time arriving here in this energy format.
You're talking about old souls.
Old souls, right. Exactly. Old souls. There could be a kid that could be ancient, could be eons old. And there could be a lady that could be 70, that could be brand new. First cycle here. First time operating in this energy, in this spiritual energy, in this dimension. So it's a lot to grasp. I know I threw a lot at you at once, but it's such a huge story. I think it's really amazing. For me, it makes me feel more incredible. I feel like I'm part of something super massive and big. I don't think it makes me feel small at all. I feel like because everything is connected, that everything is me and everything is you. If I'm talking to you, I'm really talking to myself. There's only one consciousness that exists.
Well, that was actually a question I wanted to ask you. Do you think that we share consciousness?
Absolutely.
Well, then, if we share consciousness, why is there good and evil?
I do believe to a certain extent we all are on the same consciousness. We can, almost like how telepathy works in a way. Like, have you ever reached for your phone to call somebody and they literally called you right as you reached up your phone? That's us being on the same consciousness. So I think that there's certain levels to it. I don't agree with everything Billy Carson says, but how he breaks it down definitely makes you think how other ways energy can be portrayed, like how we live eternally. I think we live eternally in certain aspects. How we live eternally depends on how we live on this life now and how we do on this earth.
Yeah, so I just wanted to do a quick recap. He kind of opened up, and I'll be as concise as possible. He opened up with the double slit experiment, and that was basically an experiment exploring reality, where they noticed that when you're not like they had this electron gun where they can fire electrons. When you're not looking, the electrons behave like waves of potentiality or particle waves, right? Is different outcomes that can happen. But when you look, it collapses to a point. So then my thought was like, okay, and so basically what the conclusion or results were saying that, like, you know, particles exist as waves of potentiality, but then when you look, it collapses to a point. So then what does this imply? And to me, this implies that, like, basically our consciousness affects reality, right? And it's kind of like a video game. Like in the video games, when you're like the character, when you can see your character and you're like interacting with the environment, whenever something's not in the field of vision of the character, it's not rendered. It's not until they get within a certain range that it collapses and you can, like, you see a building. But when the person's not looking at that building in the video game, it's not really there. It's just like it's not rendered. But when they look at it, it is rendered and the person can interact with it. And so that's a way to, like, save on processing power and things of that nature. And so to me, this discussion was interesting because it doesn't take away from, like, Christianity or anything that's already there, but it gives us a deeper level of understanding of what's actually going on here. And so it does, like, I like how he said that it doesn't take away from the creator, but it kind of points to how the creator is, like, creating creation. I know that's a loaded, sentence or phrase or whatever, but that's essentially what it does. And then it alludes to this whole thing of how our thoughts create our reality. If we're constantly stuck in the past or stuck on low vibes and things of that nature, then that creates this sense of lack that I've been experiencing, this, that, and the other. And so that's why it's so important to, like, take charge of how you're thinking, what's cycling through your mind. And then another thing I thought was so interesting. So, and another conclusion that they came that he kind of alluded to was that they realize that the particles are conscious. Like when you're not looking, they're just doing their thing as a wave of potentiality. But then when you look, they're like, oh, you're looking? They're like, let's get in form or whatever. And so it's like he was talking about it being locked into a certain frequency so that when anybody looks at it, it collapses to the same shape. But when nobody's paying attention, it's kind of like that dancing frog. It only dances when nobody is looking. Another point or source is that double slit experiment, it was I first saw it, like, I was in college, with the movie called not The Secret, but What the Bleep Do We Know? It's a couple of movies. There's this movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? Where to me, the highlight of that movie was this thing called the water experiment. It's kind of similar to the double slit experiment, but it's like where this scientist took water and he infused, like, different energies into it. Like in one bottle of water, he had a energy, like a saint or somebody like that. Put the chi or energy of, like, love on the water. And another experiment, he put the energy of hate. And then the third one, he put, like, neglect. Like just through meditation and focus and stuff like that. But when he took a sample of the water and froze it, the love one had a beautiful, like, symmetric, like, crystalline structure. And then the hate one was, like, malformed and distorted. And if my memory serves me correctly, the worst one was, like, neglect. Like that was the one that was just, like, completely, like, it just looked so bad. But that's like the water experiment. I've also seen that same experiment done with rice, but it was first introduced to me in that movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? It's a really old movie. And then the follow up to what the bleep do we know is this movie called The Secret, and that's the law of attraction again. But it's still alluding to this whole notion of how our thoughts shape our reality, like the effects our thoughts have on our reality. And then on top of that, and this is why I'm making this audio, because like all these connections, another way this was alluded was in the anime Naruto, where Naruto, basically they're ninjas, they have abilities and all this. And one of the abilities that the protagonist acquires is the ability to make copies of himself. And so these copies, they're called shadow clones. They go out and they have experiences. And he got to a certain level of the ability where he realized that like when he would make these copies, they would run around and fight and do different things. And then when the copies would like pop or die, quote unquote die, whatever experience they had would come back to him. So I say that to say, I think that we are godlike shadow clones. We're shadow clones of the creator. So we live these lives and experience it. Then when we pop or quote unquote die, our experience goes back to the creator. It goes back to the source. And so they alluded to that in this presentation where I know my audio is super long and you have to forgive me. But they alluded to it where I just had it, hang on. Goes back to the source. Oh, there's just one consciousness. The creator, right? And basically he's using this fractal holographic matrix to create this universe. But the creator has this ability to take pieces of itself, like that little spark of life that animates these bodies, and put it into all of existence. We're thinking just in terms of human level, but that's a whole nother level where you think he took pieces of himself and put it into the atoms of the chair, our clothes, our car, the air we breathe. Everything. He took pieces, or it took pieces of itself and put his consciousness into everything. And so like with the thing, at the end of the clip, he was like, well, why is there good and evil and why do we fight each other? Right. And it cut off. That's just where the video cut off. I think that as humans, somehow we have been disconnected from that truth of knowing that it's just one consciousness. We're like one of the few species that doesn't realize we're all the same, right? Like I have this experience of being me, but not being fully aware that you are also me and I am also you. And I am because we are, and we are because I am. Now there's a trippy story where this trainer is basically centered around whales and dolphins, the killer whales. There was this trainer who was training basically with killer whales, and it got to this point where their level of like connection was so strong, he felt like the whale was training him. And the whale started communicating with him telepathically through images. And so the whale basically was like, okay, I'll prove it to you. And so the whale, through images, whatever communication they had established, the whale was like, okay, show up to this place at this time, and I'm going to do something so that you know that what I'm saying is true. So the guy was like, okay. So he got like a crew, and I think you can probably find this. You might be able to find this. I haven't like stopped to look to see if I can find it, but I just wanted to share the story. So the guy shows up to whatever place the whale told him to show up at the time. Now, supposedly he brought like a crew. There might be some footage. Again, I haven't tried to look. But and so basically what happened when he showed up, this killer whale showed up with several other killer whales. And they all like surfaced out of the water at the same time and did the same thing at the same time. It was a whole pod of them. And so what the whale was saying was that, there is no such thing as an individual whale. It's all just all the killer whales, all the whales, they're just one being. We just have different pods. And like the whale was saying that basically as long as we're like within 1,000 miles of the next whale, we can like communicate. And that technique was also in Naruto as well with Pain. Pain was his character where he was basically like a puppet master. And as long as his like puppets, his dead reanimated puppets were within a certain range, he can see what each of them saw. and he can control all of them. Right. So it's like the whales, supposedly a lot of marine life, like whales and otters and things like that, are actually an alien species. Did you know that it's illegal to try to communicate with dolphins? Supposedly, like if you try to communicate with them, they'll reveal to you that, like, it's something, a similar narrative. And you can look it up and you'll see it. Like it's some trippy stuff, but it's because I was like, why is it illegal to communicate with dolphins? And that's the narrative. Again, I don't know if it's true or not. All of this stuff you take with a grain of salt. You do your own research and decide for yourself. I'm just passing on, this interesting narrative. So with the double slit experiment, we're all consciousness. It's all just one conscious, and everything is conscious. Like, that's deep, and that takes it to a whole nother level. So again, like I said, I was gonna do the best I can to make this presentation short, but yeah. So, but yeah, thanks just for listening, and it's just interesting. Yeah, this is Beautiful Mind, and take care. Peace.